What's up, Dragon Brood? I waited a little bit later in the day to put this preview, review, whatever we're going to call it, spoiler list out because today was actually a pretty light day. It's probably the lightest day so far, but here we are on Monday, April 6th, and there are still some interesting cards. We're going to go over a few things, and there was one cool thing put out from the Commander decks. Even though they showed us the 5 Commander decks, we did get to see a really cool card today. So why don't y'all hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll get everything ready for us to get into the rest of the video. So Luris the Dream Den is actually a pretty cool card. One of the better of the companions so far that we've seen. And it's pretty neat in the sense that you get to play something out of your graveyard every turn. So there's really a few things you could do with this. Like, for example, there's something like Croxa, where the card itself costs 2 and just has a recurring ability. Basically, it's a free 3 damage and discard to your opponent every turn, potentially. Or it may just be the fact that you want to be able to get something out of the yard so you can sacrifice it to whatever your sack outlet is every turn. Like, that's a thing you can do. Or if they're just something that has a maybe ETB trigger that you want, or something else that triggers off something coming back into play. Or who knows, maybe even some of the cards that, like, when stuff leaves your graveyard has a thing. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. It doesn't mean all your stuff in your deck has to cost 2 or less, so that is a bit of a restriction. But it itself has lifelink, and it's a pretty cool auto iron card, so I expect somebody to try to build a deck with this. Now, Sanctuary Lockdown is just an uncommon, but I wanted to bring it up because a couple days ago we reviewed a card that was a human that also gave a bonus to all other humans, legendary creature. But now you have that plus this, and I could see a world where you just add this to knight decks because there's so many knights that are already human, and then you have a knight that also pumps other knights, so you could be hitting with some very large creatures. And this would be the only thing you have to play. It's a non-creature, but it does give you the ability to tap your opponent's creatures. The legendary creature from the other day also lets you sack humans to kill a creature 4 or greater. So you're getting a lot of versatility out of these new cards as well if you want to go that route. So though a bunch of stuff in the set are really targeting like non-humans because you want to be able to mutate, the option to play humans is actually still there, and it's going to be really cool. So it'll be interesting to see kind of which one wins out as people start building their tournament decks. Okay, I'm just going to have to admit, here on the Fronlin Felidar, this is one of those ones that's a rare, and I'm not sure why yet. Unless there's just a ton of stuff that has Vigilance, or if there's just a bunch of stuff that has the ability to get like a Vigilance token, maybe. But otherwise, I'm not really sure. Because, like, the idea of being able to attack with a bunch of things that had Vigilance and then still tap your opponent's potential blockers before you get to that phase so they can actually block with it is actually pretty slick. But I don't know how many things we're going to have with Vigilance that we're going to want to play, or that already even exists. I should probably look into that. So maybe this is a key card in a particular creature-based deck, or it's just interesting, or maybe this is a thing that is going to be a good mutate target. But I feel like it being a rare, I'm missing something, and I just figured I'd mention it because it could be an under-the-radar card till whoever out there cracks the code. Swallowhole is a very interesting card too. It is a sorcery, so it has a little bit of a downside. And you do have to tap a creature to be able to use it. But you do get a bonus on that, and you do get to just exile a card. So it's pretty cool for 1 mana. We haven't had a 1 mana white removal spell of quality available in Standard for quite a while. So I can definitely expect to see this card get played. I don't think it'd be, Path to Exile crazy expensive, but this could very well end up being a $3 uncommon, depending on the decks that it goes into. Go for Blood's an interesting card to just bring up in the sense that this is normally a card that we see in green, but this set it actually is in red, and it has the ability to cycle. It's interesting because previously, if you were looking at this type of ability for a green deck or on a green card, you normally wouldn't play it because sometimes it's just a dead card and it sucks to draw. But when it has cycling, especially cycling for 1 colorless, like maybe you could consider playing it. I don't know if it's a main deck card or a sideboard card or, how people want to deal with it, but it just is interesting that this gives the card a very good amount of versatility that now moves it in the range of consideration for being played. Okay, this Borden's cool because it kind of is just an extra added bonus for everybody who likes playing those cat decks or making a lot of cat tokens. I mean, you can mutate, give a thing lifelink, and you get 2 creatures when it comes into play. And the interesting part about this card is that there's really not much difference between the mutate cost and the regular cost, except for exchanging colors for an additional white mana. So I could definitely see this fitting into quite a few places. I mean, if you play it for 4, it's a 3/5 lifelink creature, which isn't bad. But for the same 4, if you have a creature on the table, you just gamble and try to make it, well, possibly bigger. Who knows? But you definitely give it lifelink and you get 2 more creatures out of the deal. So that's a pretty good way to pull that out of the hole whenever you're talking about being behind and needing to get things together to come forward, especially in a creature fight, right? Like, this is something you can put on another creature. Okay, great. Now you're going to be able to gain life, which is going to help you. You now have 2 additional blockers, also with lifelink, mind you. So it's pretty neat. I mean, in worst case scenario, if this is the biggest creature of the 2 you're stacking it on, you're going to be able to gain 5 life on the next attack step, potentially. Okay, Fierce Guardianship is funny because we just saw the other card yesterday, the black one, that was worded very much the same, where if you control a commander, a thing happens, you get to play the spell for free. We knew there were going to be others, likely one in each color, and this one's very cool. You get to counter a non-creature spell for free if your commander's out. Now, this is kind of the thing that sometimes people get very concerned about, but it's really not that bad. I mean, 1, it does have to be a non-creature spell. 2, you do have to control a commander to be able to play it. Otherwise, it's just a spell counter. And for 3 mana, I mean, it's technically more restricted than something even as simple as a cancel, right? So it's not really a bad card. It's not a broken card. It's just a good all-around card. And again, and late in the game, when you want to spend some extra mana, play 2 or 3 spells, get your commander out, well, now you're still here with this spell that you can still counter something and you're not stuck. I think it also puts the brakes on opponents a little bit because they can't just go nuts knowing that, okay, well, maybe even with 1 card in hand, maybe previously they're worried about force of will or force of negation, but like in this case, you have 1 card, okay, maybe it's still a thing. And I think that's just a good balancing factor to have available. I'm not even really a fan of blue normally, but I think this card's very cool all around. And with the balancing factor of it being you have to have a commander to be able to play it for free, you don't have to worry about this card showing up in Legacy or anything. And this is one of 2 cards that got previewed late from the Commander Palace stuff yesterday that I actually wanted to go over because this is a really strong card for white. I know there's a bunch of Commander players that feel like white hasn't been getting really good stuff in the last couple of rounds of Commander printings, but they've actually picked up some goodies in this set, which is pretty awesome. But here, you get a 5 cost 3/3, which you're kind of like, all right, that's not so good. But it double strikes, like, okay, now it's looking up. But then when it attacks, you get to give something else double strike. And it's a double strike counter. So it's going to stay and that thing's going to have double strike forever. So that's pretty cool. I mean, this is going to try to deal 6. You're going to get to put it on something else that's going to get double strike. So you can start doing really large chunks of damage. I mean, this is one of those cards that if it doesn't get dealt with or you have a way to protect it, you could very quickly end up with 3, 4, 5 creatures that all have the potential to double strike whenever they attack, which can definitely start to end games pretty quickly. This is a cool card. I think it's really neat. It's also a human and a warrior, which are relevant tribal types. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this card ends up falling into place. Yeah, I wanted to make sure to bring up Xeris the Writhing Storm because I saw this card and I thought, man, this thing's weird but cool. So for 5 mana, you get a 3/5. Granted, that's 3 teamer mana and 2 colorless. So I mean, it's a reasonable cost to play. It's a 3/5. Whenever your opponent draws a card, other than the first one they draw, you get to just make a 1/1 snake, which is pretty cool. I mean, when you're worried about those opponents who are playing the decks that are just drawing tons of cards every turn and trying to spew their hand, like this is a good balancing factor to have a card like this around. And then whenever it deals combat damage, you and the player that got dealt the damage get to draw that many cards. So it's interesting because it almost works in a group hug type deck in the sense of you can look at your opponent across the table and say, hey, how about I attack you? You want 3 cards? Like, sure. So you attack them. Y'all each get 3 cards. Then you're likely going to get a couple, well, other than the first one, so you're going to get at least 2 snakes. But then your opponent also has 3 commander damage on them. So there's a lot going on with this card. It's working from a lot of different angles. You know, you can almost have like weird treaties at the table where you're like, hey, I will let that creature through because I could use 3 cards, you know, but then you also get the benefit of getting the snakes plus putting commander damage on an opponent. So Very cool, well designed. There's a lot of neat things going on with this card. It's also random that it's a Snake Leviathan, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this is definitely a card I expect to see quite a bit of. And well, that's it. Really wasn't a lot to talk about today. Not bad though. The cards were actually very interesting and very cool. Most of these, I think, I could even think of places where they would go. Other than that one cat creature with vigilance or whatever. I don't know what to do with that just yet. But yeah, overall, it was a pretty cool day of cards, even though it was a small amount of cards. And there were still a couple of commander things that came out late that we got to talk about. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, we'll definitely be at it again tomorrow. Do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you tomorrow with more previews.